You've been working on some code for an assignment and you are ready to submit it. How do we do that? Well, there's a couple important concepts that you need to understand. Right now, obviously, we're looking at a very simple file that I added to an example assignment that we created for demonstration purposes. It's just hello.py with a simple print statement in it. And we're going to walk through the actual Git verbs, if you will, for how to save your files and also tease out a few important concepts along the way. So first off, when we first started this code space, we did so from our assignment page by just kind of clicking your standard issue open in GitHub Codespaces button. Now, it's important to understand that when we opened that repository in this code space, what we got really was a copy of the code over here on GitHub. We're not directly operating on the code back on that GitHub repository. Again, it's critical you understand that this is a copy of the code. And therefore, when we go through this multi-step process of saving our changes, it's really important that you understand you're first saving them on this machine that's running off in the ether on the cloud, where your development environment is running. And then additionally, you have to push that code back to GitHub. So it's really a two-step process. So let's go through that process now, right? So we've gotten a file with some code that we want to save and push back to GitHub. So right now we're in the File Explorer menu. In order to save our changes, let's click over to this little network diagram, which is the source control panel. And you can see that it's listing one pending change, this hello.py file. There's a letter next to it that says U, which means untracked. That means Git currently doesn't know about this file. We haven't previously saved it. And so it's really the first time that we are adding it. So if you were to see a file that had the letter M, that stands for modified. So that might be a pre-existing file that you've been working on. Maybe you came back to it and now it's understood as being modified and that you want to add those additional changes and save them. So in either case, the step that you're going to want to take is first to use this plus button. And by doing that, you see now Hello has jumped from the changes menu to the stage changes menu. And what this is kind of an on deck circle for you telling Git, okay, the next time I save some changes, this should be included among them. So you could, in theory, add as many different files as you want, portions of files into this on-deck circle of staged changes. But in this case, we're just adding one. But changes are not yet saved. To do that, we need to actually commit the changes. And so I'm going to show you a little shortcut here that's going to combine really two steps. One is committing the changes to the code over here on your virtual space. The next step is actually pushing the code back over to this repository. So let's do that. This is the so-called correct workflow, right? So let's do add hello.py. And now it's tempting, but I don't want you to just quickly push the commit button because that will result in different behavior. You want to go to this drop-down menu and do commit and push. And I'll explain why that's important in a moment. But let's first do this. So let's commit and push. And it did that. And you can see, oh, okay, we're still on the source control tab, but that file has now disappeared. That's because there are no changes left for us to manage. So you need to hop back to the Explorer and you can see all your files there. Now, if we go over to GitHub and then do a page refresh, what do you know? There is our file, hello.py. So let me show you one other piece of this workflow that can result in some confusion. And let's make another change. All right, pretty simple, just another print statement. And you can see M for modified has popped up. Now, let's try to commit and then push the change in separate steps. And this is where folks might get tripped up. So I can see the letter M for modified. I'm going to go ahead and hit the plus button to stage my changes. I can see it jump from changes to staged. Again, now we're in the on deck circle. And so let's go ahead and just say little short commit message, but in this time, I'm only going to hit commit. And let's see what happens. So now you can see that I get this sync changes button. There's one change and you get a little up arrow. And the reason that the language here is different is because if you were to go over to this GitHub repository, we're going to refresh again. I'm going to click into the file and wait a minute, there is no additional print statement. Remember that we added this second print statement? It's not appearing there. Well, why? Because we have only saved this change on this little machine. It's a virtual machine, if you will, that's running off in the cloud, but we haven't yet pushed that change back to GitHub. It's really critical that you understand that distinction. GitHub is really kind of the source of truth, where your code primarily lives. That's the thing that your instructors have access to. We can give you feedback on. But if you don't push your changes from this coding environment back to GitHub, you haven't really completed the process. So if you were to do it in this two-step way, you could then click sync changes, and it's going to push those changes up. And once again, you can see there's no changes left here in the source control panel. Let's go back over to GitHub and verify is our update there. Yep, now it's there. So that's the two-step way to do it. I will warn you, if you do it that way, sometimes things can get a little tricky. Things might go wrong. So we would highly encourage you to use that single-step method. Show it one last time. All right, so we're going to hop back to source control, add our changes to be staged, and then remember, not commit, but drop down menu. Oop, we forgot our message. Drop down menu, commit and push. All right, reload, and there's our change. So really, the secret sauce here is to commit and push all at once. And that's the workflow.